before there was Pro Tools, there was professionals, and I like that. I mean, I like that when you're in the studio, you're doing a performance that hopefully gets captured, and piecing together, that's another art, and that can be cool too. But as a real live band, it's fun to try to capture some essence of what you do live in the studio, and you can't do that by pasting things together.
Hey everybody, I'm here today with Oliver Wood of the Wood Brothers, one of Atlanta's finest. We were just talking before we started rolling about the Atlanta music scene, which we'll be talking about. Good morning, Oliver. And
good morning, Alan. Thanks for having me.
Hey man, it's a pleasure. Like we were saying, I was telling you before we started rolling, we've been sort of circling around each other for a long time. So it's finally good to meet and get to know you.
Yeah.
I was sort of stunned when I realized that, and one of the reasons I wanted to finally do this is when I got a press release from your great publicist, and I was looking it over and I realized Ways to Lose, which is your Wood Brothers' first debut album, is celebrating its 20th anniversary.
And it is. It is Ways Not to Lose, just to
Ways Not to Lose. I'm sorry. That's a better title.
Ways to Lose is easy, yeah.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. Excuse me. Ways Not to Lose. 20th anniversary. And I remember when it came out and that sort of, time flies, but wow.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time, it seemed kind of like a side project for the Tedeschi, Martin, and Wood guy. There was at least a perception in my mind. I don't.
Yeah.
So here you are. Yeah, 20 years later. So is that a time for reflection for you guys? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's stunning that much time went by, and it also humbling because it's not like we were really young when we started the Wood Brothers. I mean, we were already, Chris was with Tedeschi Martin Wood for 12 years by then. I was playing, I had played with Tinsley, Ellis, and then I had my own band, King Johnson, out of Atlanta for 12, 15 years maybe. And then we did the Wood Brothers. So I was in my late 30s when we started the Wood Brothers. So anyway, it's a trip that much time has gone by, and it was a side project when it started, and yet that first album was on Blue Note Records. Like that was the first couple albums were sort of the beginning and end of our major label situation. And one of the reasons we're also celebrating the 20th anniversary is because it just recouped 20 years. That's back when a record label would give you a bunch of money to make the record, but then you don't really get paid from it until it recoups the money. And it just did after 20 years. Well,
congrats. I know 20 years is a long time, but on the other hand, most albums never ever recoup. So it's an accomplishment. My last two books have recouped, and
they did recoup?
To have had half of my books and I don't get a lot of royalties, but I do get royalties, and that alone is a major accomplishment.
Yes, you get your peanuts. So
it is. Every time that quarterly, when it comes, I smile because I did it. Even
you did it, exactly.
Yeah, go buy an extra hamburger. Yeah, so it's such a unique band. I mean, so first of all, let me back up a bit. Did you and Chris always want to do something together? And did you grow up playing music together?
Well, we started as teenagers playing together. I'm 4 years older, so we were a bit out of sync in terms of, I left the house way before he did. But we did share a 4-track, and we did play in very disorganized bands together, and we did sit and jam together all the time. And I got a bass when I was 16, I think, and I kind of got tired of it after a few months, and I gave my bass to Chris. So he would have been 11 or 12, and he just went nuts with it and became very serious musician within a year. And I switched to guitar, and we would play, and our dad played guitar, so it was not foreign to us at all. We were a musical family. So yeah, we played during our teenage years for a while, and then sort of went our separate direction literally for over 10 years. I ended up in Atlanta like we were talking about. And my brother ended up in the Northeast, first Boston, then New York. So then we just got in with these different crowds and really grew apart, as brothers, and just found our own way and grew up separately, which we always kind of are grateful for, that we went and sort of figured out our musical identities to some point and grew up separately and sort of shed the family baggage thing and then got together. It was really exciting for us when we did realize that, man, we should do something together. That's when that kind of reunited us and made us close again and gave us something in common, something to share. But we also had all these different experiences that we were able to bring together and different influences. And so it was kind of exciting to create some kind of new recipe out of all the things we'd learned in that time,
And the music you started pretty much immediately, I think, creating with the Wood Brothers was pretty distinctly different from what either of you were doing separately, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and that's why it was exciting, is we'd been grinding it out for years and doing us. I mean, I had a 6-piece band that was I was really proud of it. It never really got anywhere in the business of music, but we made like 5 albums, and I was really it developed my style and what I loved, and I think the same happened with Chris, with Tedeschi, Martin, and Wood. But then the idea of just playing the two of us, because we started out as a duo and it was very stripped down, and the idea was sort of to imply things without having them. So like as a duo, a lot of the stuff that we both loved growing up was like Lightnin' Hopkins and Jimmy Reed and stuff that was really spare. And then our dad was a folk guitar player. He knew hundreds of songs. He could totally entertain a house full of people with just his guitar. And so we loved this idea of really stripped down, even if I'm playing electric guitar through a tiny little amp, they're stripped down. There's no drums, nothing. And so that got us really excited and made us be a little more innovative and creative, I think, than if we had just suddenly had a band, and it would have been more pedestrian if we had just had a band. So,
well, and then you found a third person to join your band who is kind of a band.
Yeah, he's a band in himself.
Yeah. And can you please say his name, because I looked at it in print.
Jano Rix. Yeah,
okay,
Jano
that's
Rix.
easy.
Yeah, so,
I didn't know if it was Jano or okay, Jano Rix. So. Yeah. I mean, there he is playing keyboard, guitar, percussion, sometimes percussion on the guitar, literally with brushes. And he's got quite an array, and he creates a lot of sound for one person. So what a find for a trio. So where did he come from? And did you envision him having this role from the start?
No,
or did he?
No, not at all. We did, after playing as a duo for a few years, growing into larger venues and realizing we needed to start filling bigger spaces and, graduating from a minivan to a 15-passenger van and then a Sprinter and stuff. And we just realized we needed to have another gear to go to. So we wanted a drummer. And we heard Jano play on a tour that we were on, and we got to know him and really liked him. And we didn't know he did anything but play drums. We didn't know he could sing, play keyboards. We didn't know about his percussion instrument, which I'll clarify. He doesn't play guitar. He plays shitar.
Okay.
And the shitar is a former guitar, a shitty one, if I can say that.
You can say that.
And it becomes completely a percussion instrument.
Okay.
So, which is the most amazing thing for acoustic duo, and all of a sudden you got this guy that plays this weird thing, and you go into a radio show or something, and it sounds like a band. He can sound like a drummer on that thing. So, anyway, he just started playing drums with it, and he's like, yeah, let me put a harmony on that. And then all of a sudden we have 3-part harmonies, and we're like, what?
Well, 3-part harmony is a whole other world than 2-part harmonies. I mean, everything opens up then.
Exactly. And then when we were in the studio making the first record that he was on, which is called The Muse, he showed us how he could play piano. And he's just as good of a piano player as he is a drummer. Like, he studied piano all his life. So, and then a couple years later, he starts we add a little keyboard to his drum rig and realize he can do it both at once. And so, yeah, he's got all these things he can do, but he sounds like two guys anytime he wants to. And so that definitely expanded our horizons like by a lot. And I think what's cool is we integrated that sort of in a gradual way so that Jano evolved into the third brother and into the, he definitely helped make the sound what it is post 2013 or whatever, when the Muse album came out and we started learning, again, it's still just three of us. So a lot of times when you adapt live something from an album to live, and you say you overdubbed the keyboards or the pianos as opposed to played them live, which we really like to play as live as possible in the studio, we had to figure out how to make these things work. And that included Jano playing keyboard parts while he plays the drums. And so it just helps us innovate. The limit, we always talk about it in the studio and live, how we like having limitations. And the limitations kind of make you innovate and they make you more creative.
Well, the limitations on stage speak for themselves, but in the studio, you could do whatever you want. I mean, you could lay down 10 tracks, 20 tracks, 50. You could bring in people. But do you avoid that so that you do?
Absolutely. We especially the last few years, we've come to understand, like the last couple albums we've made with a tape machine and with only 16-track tape machine. So, and without the computer, looking at the computer. So what that does, I think, if you go back to the older technology, some people do that just because it sounds good. Like it really does sound beautiful. But it's not about that anymore for us. It's about the limitation. And I think that in the studio, the modern studio, your brain, with all the digital technology, your brain understands, at least subconsciously, that you can fix anything, anytime. Therefore, when you're playing live with your guys, you might make a mistake or something, but you might just be thinking in the back of your head, oh, we'll fix that later. And that's not where you want to be. You want to be completely present. So if you take that out and just know there's no safety net, then it's more like a show. Then you're more there and present. And so I think we just, and then you accept some of the warts and all kind of thing, like, oh, I don't care if we screwed up right there. I like it, and then you go back and listen to your favorite records and you hear stuff like that. You're like, oh, that's how they used to do it. And that's one reason we love it. We hear that human thing in there. And so we really get off on that at this point, and we make it a point to create the limitations. The other thing is looking at a screen, like looking at music, is very distracting. You're not supposed to look at it. You're supposed to listen to it. So after you finish a take in the studio and you go back into the control room to listen to it, I think having a screen on is the worst idea in the world. Whether you're looking at it or not, it's very distracting. Just like our little phones are very distracting. Yeah. But if you just close your eyes and listen, that's the way you want to take it in.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never heard anyone express that quite like that. Yeah, it's funny. I've been interviewing Warren Haynes for 35 years, and I guess 30 years since Government Mule started. And with Mule, which was, of course, a trio from the beginning.
Right.
And Warren would always say to me, well, next, I recorded my vocals and solos live because I like the feel. But I think next album I'm gonna overdub more. And he's been telling me that for 35 years. And I pointed that out to him last time because he said it to me again. And he goes, I know, I always think next time, but once we get in there, this is still what feels right. And it's that same concept. I mean, the music that we love and that made us want to do this and listen to it and be in this world was, for the most part, not made to perfection. There's some exceptions like Pink Floyd, but, most of the, stuff. Yeah. So, like Comfortably Numb. Early at Guitar World, we did this big interview with Gilmore.
Yeah.
And he talked about how Comfortably Numb was put together almost like note for note from all these different solos. And that actually devastated me. I mean, it worked, it's one of the greats, but not what we're talking about.
It must have been, though, the process of that must have been sort of a creative act in itself, because I don't know. I imagine when you're doing that by cutting pieces of tape or something, I can imagine that's just more of a hands-on thing instead of just cutting and pasting and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's true. It is still
But
an analog.
it is still a little crushing. I totally get it. But
Yeah,
I
sorry.
heard a really cool quote. I wish I could remember who said it. Like some older singer that we all love, and just said, before there was Pro Tools, there was professionals. And I like that. I mean, I like that when you're in the studio, you're doing a performance that hopefully gets captured. And piecing together, that's another art, and that can be cool too. But as a real live band, it's fun to try to capture some essence of what you do live in the studio, and you can't do that by pasting things together.
Yeah, that sounds like something Greg might have said. It has his a bit of his ring to it. So you guys just, I guess, in the last year, you released Puff of Smoke, which is, I think, your 9th album.
Yeah.
And you're touring pretty extensively through the spring and summer, basically in support of that, and I guess the 20th anniversary. And do you love being on the road? And I'll post beneath this, by the way, a link to get to all the tour dates, which are pretty extensive as of right now, running through August, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So your question was, do we still like the road? Yeah. I mean, I feel like I like it in a different way now. Like, when you're young and you start touring, you like the adventure of going to places you haven't been, and you like the freedom of that lifestyle, and you definitely love people watching you play music and applauding you, and girls looking at you. All that stuff is, when it's a novelty at first, it's a novelty, and it's exciting, and it's even indulgent. Once you have some success, you're like, hey, we're making a living and people like us. It feels indulgent, and I feel really lucky. Like, I have a lot of friends who are way more talented than me that didn't get to do this. And so it's almost like a survivor's guilt, of all the musicians I came up playing with in Atlanta who are just so talented, and not everybody gets to take it as far. I will say, burnt on touring, the travel. I'm not the music. I've never been burnt on the music, but the travel's kind of lost its. I love being home, love being home, and the attention, the applause. Well, I'm glad that people are still with us, and I can't deny. I don't. Everybody's got ego that's like, you want to be validated. But honestly, what makes it feel important enough to do, and important enough to leave your family at home and sacrifice like a more normal existence, is the connection you start to feel it creating. In other words, when everybody sings along to a song, you feel like, look at everybody's really happy right now. You can look and see everybody smiling and singing with us, where that used to be like, they're singing our song, we're killing it. Now it's just like, this is a beautiful moment where this crowd might have diverse religions and political views and left and right and whatever, but they're all right now in the same mental space and heart space, and just enjoying this. And then somebody another thing is, somebody might come up after the show and just say, your music's got me through some really tough times, and thank you. And I lost my mom this year, or whatever. It might be something like that. And then it takes it up another notch, because you feel like you're doing something medicinal, or it just feels important. Like it's real. It's a real job that has important benefits for people, and it connects me with them and them with each other, and that's the part that matters now. And that's why I'm okay saying, all right, family, I'll be gone for the next few weeks, and
Yeah, that's beautifully said. I absolutely relate to that.
Yeah.
I have a band, Friends of the Brothers, and we did
Nice.
play Allman Brothers music with Andy Aladort and Junior Mack, who played with J-Mo and Dickie for respectively. And J-Mo played a lot of shows with us for the last year and a half, although he's resting now, but he's fine.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's, I'm sort of the tour manager and acoustic guitarist in the band, and sometimes it's really a drag. But I have that. And one of the reasons I like to go out to the merch table after the shows, one is because we sell more stuff, and obviously, but
Sure.
really, you get that gratification because you get that feedback.
Yeah.
And our lives right now, regardless of how we feel about everything else, everyone's pretty stressed out.
Yeah.
And feeling the pressure and sometimes despair.
Yeah.
And when we can go out and provide a few hours of relief of that and lift people's spirit, it's a beautiful thing. And
really is.
Yeah, so going out to the merch table, again, people think it's to sell stuff, and there is an element of that, but it's because that feedback and seeing the joy of people walking out of the shows is what allows me to do it again. Because and I relate to everything you're saying. And I've never go out on the road for these long stretches, but even when I go out for like 4 days runs, I feel, your body changes. You have all of a sudden like the healthy habits you've been trying to keep at home, or, you had a couple extra drinks, or whatever. You don't eat as well. You didn't exercise, all that stuff that you try to stay on top of as we age and staying healthy. So it is a challenge to keep it up. So anyhow, I'm sorry. I relate to everything you said. I think you said it really well.
Thanks.
We were talking about some of the guys that we had in common, and Tinsley Ellis is an old friend, and we all share a lot of common interests. And you started your career, at least when I first knew of you, with Tinsley and his band.
Yeah.
For how long did you play with Tinsley, and could you just talk about him a little bit in that experience?
Yeah, well, Tinsley sort of found me playing in a bar in bars in Atlanta when I was coming up and in my 20s, and he gave me my first road gig. That was the first real sort of steady thing, and first time I had been on the road, and that's how I met Derek when he was that kid you're talking about. And that's how I met Bruce. We did some tours with of course ARU and got to know Bruce.
Derek's first recorded solo, I think, was on Storm Warning album with Tinsley, which you
that was the album I was on too.
Right.
So Tinsley was such a great first sort of teacher in that regard. Like, I don't know, just the lifestyle, and he just took me under his wing and really, and also just by example, just watching his work ethic. I mean, to this day, the guy just goes and he works and he practices his craft and he makes records, and he's a lifer, but I always really admired the way he led and the way he entertained people, and he took it very seriously. And then it was really nice to be around, Bruce, who also thought you should take the job seriously, but he thought, don't take yourself too seriously. And he reminded us of that. But Tinsley taught me a lot. He was a great mentor. And one of the biggest things was, I was working for him, and he relied on me. He jokingly called me his rhythm slave. But there came to a point, he understood that I wanted to grow and at some point become a front man and have my own band. And so he started he said, you're going to sing one song a night starting next week. So get your song ready. And he really nurtured what I was doing. And so I was with him for 2 years. This would be like 92, 93, something like that. And I learned so much, and I grew so much, and he really just inspired me to want to write songs too. He's like, you need to start writing songs, and you need to start singing all the time. And I was terrible singer. I was a guitar nerd, so I could get by there, but I was not a singer, and I didn't even have the personality for it. I was an introvert, and so anyway, very nurturing mentor to have. A really close friend to this day.
It's an amazing thing, because a lot of times somebody finds a great young rhythm guitar player, you might want to keep them bound there as your rhythm slave and not encourage them to grow, because the growth inevitably means they're going to leave.
Yes. Yeah, he was very selfless in that regard, and that was amazing.
And let's talk a little bit more about Colonel Bruce Hampton. I like what you just said, wanted you to take your job seriously, but not yourself.
Yeah.
What was he like as a band leader? I've talked about this a lot with Jimmy and O'Teal, who have a little bit different takes, but
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, so to clarify, like I was never in Bruce's band.
Okay.
I was just around him a lot because, like, I did tour. When I was with Tinsley, we toured with ARU, so I did get to spend a lot of time with him.
Didn't you play a bunch of gigs with him in Atlanta, though?
Maybe occasionally,
Yeah.
like thrown together things, and like me, you probably know Falcon or
Sure, yeah.
Tyler. Me and Tyler and Ted Pecchio did some things with Bruce, sort of maybe in between some of his bands, and so. But a lot of my friends, like pretty much anybody who has been in a band with Colonel Bruce, I'm friends with. So I've heard all the stories, and I've been around Bruce, around his people, and I just understand him to be the perfect sort of buffer, and somehow him be able to absorb and radiate some kind of energy that brings together soul and craft. And in other words, he surrounded himself with people that were really good musicians, right? And his musicianship was not as obviously, what did Tinsley, he used to call it like the emperor's new clothes. Like when you heard when you heard Colonel Bruce play next to like O'Teal or Jimmy Herring, that was hard to understand, because I think Bruce came from a non-technical world, and it was purely sound and creativity and inspiration, and the inspiration of like Bobby Bland and Howlin' Wolf, and like guitar players like Hubert Sumlin, and then maybe guitar players like Zappa, or music like Sun Ra that was wide open, no structure, completely feeling and improvisation. And by improvisation, I mean really improvising sounds, not even improvising from a scale that you learned or a bunch of jazz standard licks that you learned, which is another art in itself. And I feel like what any of those technical guys, when they were young, were lacking in creativity and soul and understanding of what it is to be an artist, they got that from Bruce. Because just technique and monster technique is not, it's only goes so far. It can't move you unless it's coming from a certain life experience, right? At least that's how I feel about it. So even my heroes that do play with incredible technique, I feel like I'm hearing some part of their life experience in there, and it comes out. And then there's some players that just don't have that yet, and they might be really young and really good. And rarely, but once in a while, you'll have a Derek Trucks who just out of the womb, you're just like, holy crap.
Right.
Anyway, hope that makes sense. But I think Bruce made you reconsider what was special and what was, he was very much about what his mentors or his heroes were about, which was being themselves. You know what I mean? So I think he teaches people to be themselves, and that's the highest art, is being yourself.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. And I think the only thing I would add to it is I think he had the knack of seeing into people's souls a little bit and being able, because not everybody who has amazing technique but isn't expressing themselves yet has something to say. Yeah. But he had that ability to see that inside Jimmy Herring and O'Teal, and there's many others, but those are two probably most prominent, obvious examples. I mean, they did have a lot more to say, and that he just needed, they needed to be unlocked, and he had the ability to unlock them. But I think the first part of that skill is just recognizing who those guys are. Yeah. And then the second part is pulling it out of them. But there has to be something to pull out,
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah. And you co-wrote the song The Ending with Derek and Susan. Which, I interviewed Derek, I guess, when The Signs came out, and we talked about it a lot, that song a lot. And he said, I had to write it and record it, and we'll never perform it, ever. Like, we're never playing it again. That was a one-time thing. And that was a very, very difficult period for our little world here in 2017. Between January and May, we lost Butch. Bruce and Greg.
Yeah.
And obviously the Bruce one was so visceral for all of you who were on stage with him.
Yeah.
And I wrote obituaries about all of them, and I interviewed Warren for all of them on the third time with Greg. I mean,
Yeah.
Warren was in Europe, I think, and we were on the phone, and I said, Warren, I can't believe we're doing this again. And we were both more or less crying. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we weren't literally sobbing, but we weren't all there. And then it was really hard. And then with Derek and Susan, add Kofi, Enrico. I mean, it was Enrico was maybe a little later, but it just kept coming, and you helped them work through that musically with the ending. And if anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a link to that below here as well. Everyone should go listen to the ending. You're never going to hear it live, or so Derek told me. People change their minds. Could you just talk about that a little bit, the process of writing that song, and how conscious you guys were about we need to get this out and wrap it up?
Yeah, it's been a little while, but I do remember, over the years, Susan's another person I met while I was with Tinsley. I remember she opened for us in Boston, wherever we were playing, when she was like a teenager also. And so I go so far back with them. And over the years since they started their thing together, they've been they would have me come down and do writing sessions at their with them in Jacksonville. And so we had done some stuff before that and had a great rapport, and we toured quite a bit with Tedeschi Trucks. The Wood Brothers and Tedeschi Trucks have done a lot of shows together. And so it was just a comfort zone. And of course, we were all there that night that Bruce passed. And so we had all experienced that together. And I don't know, I just remember us hanging out, talking about it, and noodling around. And we basically finished it and then recorded it. I thought maybe that's a demo, who knows? And that was just it. We never played it again, never talked about it again. It was just done. But I do remember it was super casual, and it's just like us sitting in a circle in the studio and almost just working on it, and then sort of recording a version of it, and it feeling like, I don't think we're gonna. That says everything. And, a lot of times, I don't know if you ever have this as a writer, but I do have this as a writer too. And also in the studio, they say like there's a first take magic, right? Like the first time you write something without thinking about it, but just doing it, and it somehow comes from somewhere, even though you could do it better somehow technically, it never quite has the same impact. And you just keep going back to it. And I feel like that was one of those moments where we just wrote it and sang it and recorded it, and it got out of our system. It was somehow therapeutic and beautiful, but not like some kind of masterpiece. It's just like working through something and saying what we need to say, and then set it free, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think my sense, at least with Derek and Susan, is that by doing that, exactly what you said, by setting it free, they set themselves free a little bit from carrying the burden, because like I said, it was a lot, and that night I know was particularly emotionally grueling for all of you.
Yeah.
I just a couple more guitar questions. One of the things you do that I think is really cool, and you do really well, is use a National Steel guitar as a strumming guitar. Like we would think of using a Dreadnought Martin style guitar.
Yeah.
And you make it look pretty easy. It's not easy. For those who don't know, those guitars aren't really set up to play big full chords on. I'm just curious, A, if you have any technical trick, like do you have the settings low, or do you use a little bit lighter strings than normal? And B, like, how did you come up with that? Was that just...
So we were talking earlier about, like my brother Chris, he's a virtuosic bass player, upright bass, and he's super articulate. His sound is huge. It's loud, and I'm talking about just acoustically. And then Jano plays his Shitar, so I'm talking about sort of a formation where we go acoustic, right? And a lot of times we're around one mic. So this is a part of the show where we go unplugged for a minute, and we just were around this one mic. And the volume created by Jano's percussion and Chris's bass, the acoustic volume, is a little bit too loud for a regular flat guitar. And so, and in the early days of the Wood Brothers, I did a lot of stuff on the National guitar, and that was kind of part of the sound. So I started making a point to try the National, number one, so it could compete and keep up with those other two instruments acoustically, but also because I kind of get tired of strumming acoustic flat top guitar. Like, it just sounds very pedestrian, or, it's classic, of course, and sometimes I get bored with it. I tune out when I hear it. I want to hear something different. That's why I like the Shitar that Jano plays percussion. Like, it's kind of cool to hear something that it's not a drum set. It's not a Latin percussion or African percussion thing. It's just like shitty guitar that he's hitting. So I like that it's a little unusual, like you said, to strum that guitar or to play it like it's an electric guitar and play like funky rhythms on it, or like James Brownie kind of rhythms or whatever, the meters, but on a National guitar. So I think I was just inspired like that. And it's not, I still have the heavy strings, the action's high enough so I can still play slide on it and stuff. And I don't play that all night. I think if I did, I would have lifelong divots in my fingers. But it might not be sustainable, but it is for a few songs worth suffering,
Yeah, I think it sounds terrific. I love that sound, and I have messed around with doing that, and I can tell you from experience, it's not easy. It doesn't sound right until you got to really work it to make it to even start.
I will point out for the guitar nerds like you is that guitar that I'm doing that on is a Triolean. It has the 3 cones, and I think that helps it work. Like, it's not quite as mid-rangey as the Duolian or the ones that have the single cone in it. So,
right. And those guitars the reason they became popular with blues guys is they were trying to cut through the sound in juke joints. And so,
exactly right.
Basically an electric guitar, pre-electric guitar, sort of.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I wanted to ask you about electric guitars. You were talking about how you had a 6-piece band and all your years with Tinsley. And do you ever miss getting up there with a big band and opening up the amps and feeling the back of your legs vibrate?
Yeah, I definitely remember that being kind of a beautiful thing. And, every once in a while, if I sit in with a band or show up at a bar and sit in or something, I get that feeling, and I remember, like, dang, this is fun, So I absolutely miss that. And for the last 20 years, I have been really into tiny little amps. Like, I love the sound of it. I love how you put a mic real close to it, like a condenser mic, and it sounds huge. And I like that it's easy to carry. And I don't know. I'm just a big fan.
What amps specifically?
Well, when we started the Wood Brothers, Chris had this collection of these little K. It's called a 503 or 703. It's a little K, like you would have bought it at Sears or
with a K guitar probably in it.
Right. So, like, real consumer little thing, and we just had a bunch of those and kept them running. And I love those. There's a little Silvertone 1481 that I love. And then I've always loved champs of all kinds, Fender champs. And so live now, I always have a little amp, usually that Silvertone 1481, with a bigger amp, like a Princeton size amp next to it.
Well, look at this.
What you got? Here we go. Here comes out the...
Well, no, it's easy. It's little, so I can just pick it up. So this is I think it's a 1960, if I recall, Princeton. Somebody refinished it. I bought it like this to look like the old Mesa. I bought it at Chelsea Guitars in, I think, 1991 or 92. And it's just, I've had it tweaked a little bit just to get it back to the original sound. But it's, it's all I really need. I don't, and it's, once you learn, all that's on there is the tremolo, volume, and tone. But you learn to manipulate it a little and which pickup to use when and the volume and tone controls and
limitations, right?
Yeah, limitations. But it has a broad range, and heck, they recorded Layla on it, So
yeah.
Well, listen, Oliver, it's great to finally talk, and thank you for your
Likewise.
time.
Thank you,
And
Al.
congratulations on 20 years. It's an accomplishment. It's very cool that you've done it with your brother.
Yeah, feels good.
And created this unique niche. And again, Puff of Smoke is the newest album, Ways Not to Lose, 20th anniversary, and touring all summer. So everyone go check out the Wood Brothers when you can, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the road.
All right, Alan, pleasure. Thank
you.
you.